Actually, Connor, what's your last name?
Gint.
Gent? Okay. All right, welcome in, folks. This is another episode of the Wanks FPL podcast, a real special one this week. We have Newcastle fan and I can already tell expert Connor Gent here to just talk to us a little bit about his favorite team with regards to FPL and without regards to FPL. He's doing us a massive favor to come on here and chat a little bit more about this so that we can get some insights into it. And if there's anyone out there watching this, they can as well. But yeah, I think this is wild. Thank you so much for coming on. But from what I've learned, you don't even play FPL, but you put together a ton of information for us and are just interested in talking about your team. So yeah, tell us more about, how you don't play the game with this much interest, and then how long you've been a Newcastle fan and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. In terms of, I played FPL maybe 6-7 years ago-ish, and then tried to get a bunch of friends to do it as well. And I did the whole, week by week, you total up your total score, if that makes sense.
Oh my God.
And then we were in a league of 16 people, and everybody lost interest by like week 10. So that didn't go super well. And that kind of, it faded into oblivion. But I don't play now currently because I just don't want to get frustrated if a certain player doesn't score or whatever. I'd rather just enjoy the league, enjoy the games, enjoy the goals and things like that, and not be mad that one person scored the other person didn't, despite it being a positive outcome, no matter what. So that's my take on that. In terms of Newcastle, I saw them play at Miller Park. I believe it was 2015, I believe. Did either of you guys go to that game or not? They played, I believe maybe Atlas, or they played a Mexican team. So I went there, and they had a right back named DeAndre Yedlin on the team. And I was looking to pick a team. I didn't want a top 6 team. And I was like, hey, I played left back in high school. DeAndre Yedlin was American playing right back. They're the first team I saw live. And I said, screw it. Let's hop on the Newcastle train. That year they got relegated. So then that was unfortunate. The next year, I was listening to NUFC radio because they were in the championship. And in 2016, there wasn't a great way to watch the championship in America at the time. So I literally listened to the games on the radio in the second division team that I picked randomly the year before. And then the rest is kind of history. Obviously, since then they got promoted that first year, and then they've been in the Premier League the last, 8 years. And obviously the takeover in 2021 helped the success of the team a little bit. And now we're here talking about who we should, have in your FPL team, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There used to be a target fixture a couple years ago. It'd be like, all right, you're playing Newcastle, play all your guys against them, captain against them. So
it is interesting as somebody who, I have a weird relationship with the Prem of having followed it a long time ago, took a full break and then came back to it, where I was like, oh, Newcastle. I said this to Mac when he first got me into FPL. I was like, oh, that's sick. Newcastle's good again. Nice. Good. Cool. Well, yeah, let's just jump right into it then. Obviously, you prepared some slides for us to talk a little bit more in depth about this stuff. So high level, I think, we want to touch on a little bit the overarching trends with Newcastle. Modern take, or in recent years, they have been a lot more of a defensive minded team, but I'm curious to hear what your take is on that and how they're adjusting and what someone who's clearly a very thoughtful coach and strategic coach like Eddie Howe is doing with this squad going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, obviously in the summer you guys lose Isak, but curious kind of what is your holistic look at this team so far in the first few games, just from a high level, I know their underlying defensive numbers are super good, but what is your general take on this squad without that top scorer and seeing how they've gelled so far?
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the table right now, right at 2-3-2 with 6 goals scored, you might be thinking, what the heck? Why would I ever even consider adding a forward to the team, right? But there's a lot of context there as to why they only scored 6 goals, as to why they're sitting, 11th in the table or whatever. And I think it's a lot rosier outlook going forward offensively. And we'll dive into that a little bit too. And then, in terms of in the aggregate defensively, I think they are either almost as good as their numbers show or as good as their numbers show. So there's a lot of defensive options you can pick up both in the near and the medium term as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, I know you added in here some kind of high level notes of what happened in the summer. Obviously, we don't want to spend too much time here because we're familiar with who left and who came. But as a general rule, do you feel like this is a team that, to your point, being in 11th is a little bit of a misnomer right now? Is this a team that you do think is going to finish around near top of the table? And
to summarize the summer in one sentence, extremely disruptive, and basically the first 3 games of the year were basically a wash. We got coined rejection FC among other things. But if you would have went into a coma in July and woke up at the end of August, you would actually been like, hey, that was actually a good window based on how it ended up. Sure. So then, first 3 games, because the window's still open, kind of a wash. The next 3 or the next 4 were much, much better. And I think based on who they got, based on a lot of things are sorted out now, they're gelling a little bit more. There's a lot of things kind of behind the scenes. And I do think that everything in the past is both, yes, it was real, but the negative things were, you can kind of like explain them away. And the positive things, I think, going forward will become more positive. And I think we could easily fight for 5th, fight for 6th place this year, and not too far off the 4th, even potentially, assuming things go well. So I don't anticipate being behind Man United for long. I'm sorry. I don't anticipate it hovering around that 10th, 11th range for very long.
I think it's also worth mentioning that you've played Bournemouth, Arsenal, and Liverpool already. Yep. Bournemouth and Arsenal, at the very least, looking like very strong teams. So kind of the fixtures are turning too. And I think that's one of the reasons we want to do this special right now is like, okay, things are changing. 3 hard games out of the way. Right. Are they going to gel? Big question.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to find out.
For sure.
Well, yeah, let's walk through it then. I know you'd put this together on a little bit more of a game-by-game perspective. I think this is really relevant with Newcastle specifically because when I look at them as a team, something that keeps me from being excited about going there is just the uncertainty around the lineup. It seems like this season, Eddie Howe has been, I think of that Leeds game specifically, but has been a little bit more likely to rotate players and has been a little bit more unpredictable in terms of his style. I know he's like a sought after coach and does a lot of really interesting tactical stuff, but yeah, I'm curious what your perspective is on, was that an outlier? Are some of these lineup changes more hey, we learned from previous injuries, or how can we look at this lineup going forward? Is it something that is easily predictable, or is it kind of just a crapshoot?
Yeah. We'll dive into it more when we get kind of position by position. In terms of the early stages, right, those first 3 games, we literally had 0 strikers. And then Gordon's like our 3rd string striker. He got a red against Liverpool. So we were rolling out all wingers. So first 3 games, kind of a wash. After that, we got Voltemata in from Stuttgart. And you probably have, if you've been following FPL, probably seen it's done pretty well, but different stylistically, it's taking time to gel. The main thing is, I'd say defensively, we've got a couple people locked in terms of they've earned their slots, but they're injured right now. So then you kind of have 4 spots up for grabs across the whole back line. So that's one thing. Then striker, I think Voltemata will be good through about January because Wiss is injured and Wiss has got AFCON coming up. But then after that, it's a little bit up in the air. So I think from an FPL perspective, if you're okay working in 5 to 10 week increments, I think there's a decent roadmap there. If you need someone to not transfer the entire season, it's a little bit more risky, I would say.
That's a good perspective. So worth clarifying, I don't think I realized this. You said you got Voltemade after week 3, so after the Leeds game? Interesting. Yeah. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So he came after week 3. I think he was purchased like the day of or the day before, but then didn't actually make his debut until Wolverhampton. And then Vissa, we bought him then, and then he literally went to World Cup qualifiers immediately after, and he's had 0 training minutes with the team yet because he got injured on international duty and has never trained with the team yet. So
that's crazy.
So a lot of kind of disruption there. Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I know we'll touch more on specific assets and specific players, but even looking at that first couple of games, I remember watching them and just seeing, and especially in that Liverpool game, that Anthony Gordon just looked in all of those games like he was going to be really central to what they were doing. His work rate was super high, which is interesting to me because in previous seasons, or at least last season, it seemed like when he was on the wing, he was a little bit more effective. But it looked like at the start of the year when he was playing up at the, in the forward role for a time, that he was really interesting in attacking. So he is definitely one of the players coming out of this team that I have the most questions around as, what's his role going to be now? I saw, recently he's been getting subbed off for Harvey Barnes and stuff like that. But regardless, just interested to see now that this team has really settled and some of that shuffling that you mentioned and his suspension is over, how this attack is going to land specifically, because the defense and that really staunch defensive midfield you guys have has stayed pretty intact, but the rest of it feels a little unpredictable. So.
Yeah, 100%. All those questions you have are valid, and I bet Eddie Howe's asking similar ones too. So
sure, cool,
fair enough.
All right, let's jump right along. You got a few FPL assets you just want to, or guys you just want to shout some love to here?
Yeah, just to see their face, to be honest. Newcastle is very much a family club, right? We take a photo after every single win, right, of the dressing room, things like that. Family comes on the field quite often, so I don't want to talk about them for an extended period of time and not actually see some of these faces. But this will be the last time you see their faces. No FPL value here, but again, some good ones there.
I did not know what half the slide looked like. This is fun.
Yeah. And talk to me, the name that is the most familiar here from last season, I think, is Jamal Lascelles. He's just fully out of the lineup at this point? Is that why you say he's FPL irrelevant? Or
yeah, so he's the club captain. So he'll be here until he retires, basically. Been with the club for I think good 8-9 years. But yeah, he is 5th string starting or center back. So even with an injury to both center backs, he still wouldn't see the field.
He's not going to feature.
Gotcha. And then Ramsdale, obviously, he's on loan currently. They paid a hefty loan fee, I think close to $5 million, and then they have like a $25 million option for next year. So no rumors of him usurping Pope at goalkeeper, but something to keep an eye on, obviously, if he does. But no rumors at the moment.
Okay. One question I do have out of these guys is Osula is a forward, but when you guys were having those injuries, how was a lot less likely to actually start him and instead was putting players like Gordon who don't play forward into his place? Do you happen to understand the motivation there? Is that just a player that Howe must not be very high on, or why is he not being relied on in those
emotionally very high in him, keeps talking about his character, keeps talking about all those things. He's not too young either. I think he's already 21, so he's not a teenager, but basically from both actions and some words, Howe doesn't feel that he's ready for a kind of a long-term contributor role this season, right?
Got it.
So maybe next year, maybe the year after, but not this season.
Okay, cool. Well, let's start on the defensive side of things, where I think this is, from an FPL perspective, is a team that can be a little bit more relied on. The underlying data says a lot of really positive things about this squad, and curious to hear your take on any of the guys that maybe we should be going for there.
Yeah, worth noting real quick before we hop in, I was looking at this a couple weeks ago, and I was starting to realize that in all of the tables, Newcastle was really high up defensively. Yep. And they were just playing some challenging games and not putting it forward offensively. So I was kind of and one of the reasons I wanted to kind of put this together was I was is there, once the games turn, value to be had? I think that's the central question we're trying to answer. Is there a likelihood of clean sheets? And then does Newcastle DEFCON? Because I follow the Prem, obviously, but I don't have a chance to watch all their games and figure those things out. And this is one of the groups I'm really looking with a keen eye at.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to jump ahead a tiny bit, we've got a slide for DEFCONs about 4 deeper, and then a more defensive stat slide about 5 deeper. Yeah, boom, there you go. Sounds good. So delay DEFCON. So again, we talked about, we'll go back later and kind of talk about the individual players. These are our 4 center backs. All have gotten consistent starts, either due to injury, suspension, or whatever. And it looks like, I don't know if you guys know, I just did a quick Google search. It looks like it's about a third of center of defenders DEFCON any given week. Not sure if that's true or not. But we've got a pretty decent, granted, small sample size. You got 43%, 25, 50, 67 across the board in terms of DEFCON. So I would say center backs have a decent shot there. Downside is these aren't necessarily scoring center backs. Shar will get you 3 or 4 goals every year, but nobody else is really a major goal threat. So you're kind of relying on DEFCONs there. But so positive side, I would say above average in DEFCONs. Downside, not quite sure who our starters are long-term, but we'll talk about that in a minute. In terms of outside backs, 0 chance of DEFCONing, some chance for assist though. And then in terms of our central mids, We've got Bruno and Tonali have not really gotten too close for any DEFCON points this year. And then Joelinton, he will, but he's also susceptible to yellows and injuries.
Sure.
So I don't recommend Joelinton, but he will get you to DEFCONs occasionally in that central mid role.
It's such an interesting team because you guys are allergic to fantasy points, but very good. Like you just play in a way that is completely contrary to earning fantasy
Clean
points
sheets,
at all
baby.
times.
Clean sheets. Got 5 of the 7 games, I think, are clean sheets. So we'll take it.
So I know you prepared some other slides. We can go back to those. But one question I have on Burn is I'm seeing that he's jumping out far and away on the starts list.
Yeah.
Does that make him a rotational risk at all? Like, is he just consistent, Mr. Reliable, or is Eddie Howe going to at some point need to take him out, especially once we get later into the fall in like December?
Yeah. So at the moment, Eddie's got him as, or at the moment in terms of starts the season, starting center back and then kind of third string left back. But the first 2 left back options are currently injured. So you got Burns going to start in the left back now for the next 5 weeks, give or take. And then I assume once those guys are back, he'll probably shift back centrally. Eddie Howe is legitimately loves Dan Burn in a way that I think it's hard for grown men to comprehend. And he's played, I think 37 games 2 years ago and 38 games last year or something like that. He's played all 7 this year. So I don't think he's a risk to be dropped purely because of, Jordy Love in the Northeast, and he's a local boy and all those things, scored in that Carabao Cup final, but also because he can cover a couple positions, and Eddie Howe just loves him. So
interesting follow-up on that. If he's not getting dropped, but he is getting moved to the outside, I do see here that you said that the Newcastle outside backs are not good DEFCON candidates.
Yeah.
Does that lessen the value of Burn because he's playing out of position?
No, he doesn't play as a typical left. So Lewis Hall is the starting left back, right?
Okay.
Young, short, getting up and down the wings. Dan Burn basically plays in that, similar to what the Pep teams play and the Arteta teams play, where it's basically he's a center back by trade, and then Trippier will get pushed way forward in like a banana shape almost. So he'll most likely play in terms of DEFCONs. I'm not sure how it's going to impact it, but he doesn't change that much in terms of his role. It's a little more like a 3 at the back. He's just nominally left back.
So he's not charging up the field. Like that's basically what we're learning. It's kind of what makes sense from the player profile, but
no 6'6" guys running up and down the wings.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate you humoring us with the DEFCON stuff because as somebody who doesn't play the game, I'm sure it's got to be weird to be like, what even is a DEFCON? But I do think it's worth noting that like. With this, looking at the teams that they've played, there's got to be some noise in terms of, is this a consistent trend in terms of DEFCONs? Because when you start to look, so defensive contributions from what we've seen is generally, are you getting clearances? Are you kind of parking the bus? That seems to be the recipe for a team or certain players getting DEFCONs. We know that center backs are more likely to get them than left backs or wing backs of any sort. But I think when I'm thinking of some of these games that they went through, right, like the Liverpool game, that was a full press game the whole time. That was a really choppy stop and start game. I would assume that's not great for DEFCONs. Playing teams like Leeds and Wolves, where Newcastle is naturally going to have more possession, is going to mean they're not going to incur DEFCONs and stuff like that. But you would think teams like, in theory, Villa, Liverpool, and Arsenal, they would generate a little bit. Anyway, all that to say, I'm curious to see if someone like a Dan Burn, who, when he's playing his typical center back role and when he's, heavy on the clearances and stuff, whether his DEFCONs will actually go up based on some of the matchups they have, or if, the numbers that you put together now are going to stay a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, that's true. And then when you do play a Wolves, for example, and don't get those DEFCONs, then you're just banking on a clean sheet, for example, to make up for it. But if you get neither, then you're toast. So
I still haven't been able to figure out the value prop there. I don't know what I value more right now, the clean sheet or the DEFCONs.
I don't think that in Newcastle's case, it seems like any of the guys you presented are, at least currently, doing it at a high enough rate, right? Maximum that we saw in that table you just shared was half of the games, some players getting it. That they can be consistently relied upon as like a DEFCON monster, as they're calling them. But I do think the value, if you were picking a team that is better for clean sheets in general, I do think that's that's where you get the more points back. And like, obviously we're seeing that with the Arsenal guys, because if you can get the occasional DEFCON and you're getting consistent clean sheets, and the occasional attacking return, and, you know, big 6-6 Dan Burn in the box is not a bad play for that. Anyway, I definitely am more interested in shifting now to kind of the how are they defensively. You know, they're second for XGC in the Prem right now. Curious if you think that's something that's going to continue. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. There's a slide after the DEFCON 1, I think, that has the defensive stuff on it. There you go. Perfect. So yeah, it's not just goals conceded. It's not just expected goals. Every metric, shots faced, clean sheets, the distance of shots, errors, things like that. I think you got, Malik Chow, you got Sven Botman, you got Dan Burn, have played really, really well in those center back roles. Fabian Schär too. And the thing on the bottom there, so 2 years ago, so granted there's a year in between, but it was literally the exact same goalkeeper, and all 4 of the 5 of the same back lines basically went through the season. We gave up 33 goals, so joint least goals, I think, with Arsenal at the time, and then the second least expected goals against there. So not only is it like it's tried and true, same coach, basically same back 5 entirely, have done this before, they have been successful. And then Eddie Howe's, I think, been a little more pragmatic this year with the whole Champions League fixture congestion. So I do feel like underlying numbers are good. They've done this before. They've shown that they're willing to set up shop, especially on the road, if needed. So I do think I am high on the defense going forward, just as a collective unit.
Yeah, I apologize if you listened to last week then when Sharp and I were doing our back and forth. He was like, well, do you think Palace's defense is better or Newcastle's? And I think I said Palace, but since then I've been looking at the data and I'm like, what the hell was I talking about?
Oh, yeah, that was crazy last week. I was like, no way.
But I think the question with this defense then, and along the lines of the DEFCONs and stuff like that, is can any of these guys be relied upon from a consistency perspective to play all the games?
So for sure.
Jumping into, I see you put together kind of what his preferred 11 is, and talk us through some of that.
Yeah, we can kind of fly through this a little bit, but this is if Eddie Howe would have had Johan Vissa at the start of the year. This is probably how he would have lined up, right? So you'll see Burn and Schär in the center back roles there, and then you got Hall and Livramento are both the current and the future England outside backs, because they're both 22 and under, I think. So yeah, outside backs are set in stone, center backs up for debate. But now one more slide. If you notice, the center backs in this next slide is what we have now, because you have Livramento and Hall are both hurt. So Burn shifts out, Trippier takes his place on the right side, and now you've got Botman and Malik Chow in the middle, right? So a little bit of disruption there. And then if they want to go attacking, a little more attacking, right? If you're playing a team, like Forest, like Leeds, like Burnley, whatever it is, they might switch out, someone again, especially in the midfield. And then obviously going forward, if you want to go 2 slides from now, you also have the age profile of actually one more, sorry. One more, sorry. That's right. But going forward, if, you got Fabian Schär is going to be 34 in about a month. You got Dan Burns 33. When you got Champions League fixtures in there too, how often are they going to want to play those guys 2 times a week, pushing 34 versus you've got, Botman and Chiao, for example.
So that's what I noticed as well, because even Trippier is really up there as well.
Trippier's 35.
He's coming in as a backup, but he was playing for Spurs when I was getting into soccer, and that was a long time ago now.
Yeah, for sure. So age is definitely a factor, and then you got the midweek games. So it's there's definitely considerations there, and that's why kind of my initial point. If you're okay going in 5 to 10 week increments, I think you can make some real good decisions. If you want someone to hold on to for 20, 25, 30 weeks, I feel like you might be in a little murkier waters for sure.
Interesting. I think something, a follow-up question I have to that is in your initial slide of what is the first choice starting 11, you had Vissa in there over Voltamade, and I'm sure I'm butchering both of those pronunciations, but I am curious. I wouldn't have expected that. So you think that when healthy, when they're both ready to go and firing, that it would be Wissa in it as striker there?
And again, the last 6 weeks were crazy, right? So if they both would come in on day one, they'd both be healthy. Right. Vissa for sure would have started. That was the intention coming in. Voltamade has only played a season and a half of top flight, Top Flight Soccer. He's 23. Also different physical profile and style, right? Vista is very much just more of a poacher and can slot in easier, but you've probably hopped on the 6'6" German train in the last few weeks. He's scored a lot. He's kind of like a little golden retriever. He's very likable. And now it's going to be a tough decision in terms of who's going to start long term. But because of Vista's injury, because of AFCON coming up in January, I bet Voltemata's got from now to January a pretty clear path to start almost every game, or at least the big games. So I think you're good from a forward perspective there. But yeah, it's kind of like lineup questions all over the board here, which is
100%. And I'm asking you to have the crystal ball, which I think is incredibly difficult. But Voltemata's made an absolute scene of his starts, and I don't know if you saw, he scored I think earlier today for Germany as well. So he's he's flying. I do think it's interesting from that perspective. Do you think that, again, he's new to your team, so you don't have to have a ton of knowledge here, but I have heard elsewhere that he despite his size, has not typically been like an aerial threat, but he has scored a couple of header goals for you guys. Do you think that's something that's, what I'm really trying to get at is, do you think he's overperforming a little bit right now, or do you think that he's just kind of fitting perfectly into this system and is going to be pretty central to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, to be honest, right? You simultaneously could be the whole, new signing bounce of sorts, right? Hits a purple patch, whatever it is. Previously, so before he signed for Newcastle in August, he had scored 20 goals, right? 20 top flight goals. 2 of them were headers, right? Since signing for Newcastle, he's played, I think, like 6 or 7 games. He's got 2 headers from Newcastle and 1 header for Germany. So he's more than doubled his header output in like a 6-week period versus the entire year and a half previously, which is a little bit ironic. But one thing that's slightly worrying is, I think I saw a stat, I didn't verify it recently, but I think he scored 10 goals on his last 19 shots. So that's like a
Holland stuff.
Yeah, like 55% conversion rate, whereas normally it's in the 20s, give or take. Sure. So definitely. So one, yes, you could say, yes, he's very clinical. Also, like we've had Miguel Almiron go on a purple patch a couple of years ago, and he literally looked like prime Messi for a 4-week period and then was unplayable 6 months later, right?
That was true.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but like I think the hype is valid of sorts, but I don't think he's going to be challenging Holland for any scoring trophies. And I don't think he's going to become this aerial threat, because even in his interviews when he joined the team, he was like, hey, I know I'm 6'6". By the way, I like to play with my feet. I've only scored 2 headers in my life, so it's.
And then he proceeded to score 2 of those again. Yeah. So yeah,
exactly.
Wild.
So my question on this, and on sort of like the Voltermade Wissa debate discussion, however you want to frame it, is what needs to happen for the offensive to click? Like, and does that inform the striker choice? But I'm more so interested in the first part. Like, I think we can pretty flatly say that Newcastle is a solid, stout defense, and like we should be looking probably at the Newcastle assets for mid to long-term ownership. But what switch needs to flip in order to get this offensive functioning? Because we have Alenga, who's a good player. I was watching him at Forest last year, and he's a great player. And he has no goal contributions. I feel like Anthony Gordon hasn't been super dangerous, and I just don't watch enough Newcastle to know that, obviously Isak's good. But was Newcastle only good because Isak was good, or are they just actually good? Because I find Newcastle be a bit of this unicorn case where they're really robust defensively, but also really potent offensively.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the Prem, you often see one or the other. Like there's the Ange ball, which is way over to one side of the spectrum, but then you got the Mourinho's and the Contes and the Sean Dyches and any lower team style basically. So I don't know. I'm curious about what has changed obviously since Isak's departed, and then how either Wissa or Voltermade's going to fill that.
Yeah, I think. Do you mind if I make you jump slides a couple?
No, of course.
We go back to that like list of 10, the first 10 matches.
Yes.
Kind of earlier in the right there. Perfect. I think it's already flipped to a certain degree. Granted, grain of salt, right? If you look, so first 3 games, throw them out the window, right? Next few games, Voltamata comes in, right? A little bit tougher. You're playing Barcelona, you're playing at Bournemouth, where we shut up shop. If you look at the last 4, Bradford City, yes, they're League One, but hey, like we've seen teams struggle against Grimsby too, So I'm sorry to toss it out there, but or no, sorry, they're a League One. They're second in League One, right? So it's third tier. But we put up 4.7 expected goals and 6 big chances created.
Right.
Then move forward to Union Saint-Gilloise. They beat PSV 3-0 on the road the week prior. So granted, Belgian, yes, top of the Belgian league. Not sure how great they are, but they beat PSV. And then we went there on the road, put up 2.7 expected goals, 6 big chances. And then Forest at home, 3.4 expected goals and 6 big chances. So those
we were talking last week at how much that jumped out. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, you had the Arsenal game in between there. And to be honest, Arsenal kind of just dominated, and that's fair. So
sure.
I'm not trying to just paper over the negatives and accentuate the positives, but I do feel like, at least statistically, but also emotionally around the club, they feel like they're understanding the way Voltamana wants to play. They feel like they're kind of getting out of the funk of those first, those August blues and everything that was tumultuous before that. And I do feel like it actually has flipped to a certain degree. I'm not sure if they can maintain that, but I am feeling a lot better if you just look at those 3 of those 4 last lines, are showing some positive signs.
No, this is clarifying for sure. I mean, every stat jumps at Bradford. I know obviously those are some easier teams, but if we're looking at numbers this big, and I think this lends itself well to fantasy upside, is because if we're looking at numbers this big against bad teams, I think a key principle that I always look at when trying to choose players is, are they on a team that is capable of absolutely wiping the floor with bad teams?
Mm-hmm.
Like Arsenal's going to come out and take it to just about anybody in the world, so you can't really fault the team for that. And I mean, 4 chances again isn't crazy against Arsenal, but I really want teams to capitalize in big ways against, lesser opposition.
Yeah.
And like a Nottingham Forest, it's nice to see 3.5 XG against a Prem team.
It's a lot.
For sure.
And I think the only concern for me about attack with this team, even if they start clicking, is the certainty of minutes. And so I like how you put together a couple of these slides here where you have how they might set up in ball dominant matches and how they might set up in defensive minded matches. Yep. When I think of this, the reason, what Max just said, we as FPL managers want to target, those promoted fixtures or West Hams or now Forests. But we saw them set up in a really weird way, in a surprising way, I should say, that Eddie Howe went with a really different lineup against Leeds. So talk us through like how you read that crystal ball of tactics from him of who he might try to set up.
Yeah. Good question. I'm not sure. Should we go position group by position group for the recommendations, or should we sit in the formations? What do you think is best?
I don't mind position groups.
Sure. That works. So moving further down, you mean?
Yeah. So I think just a couple more. It'll be our defensitive recommendations.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet.
Cool. Sounds good.
Love these.
This is again just goalkeepers.
Such a good way of displaying this.
Thank you. Good to see everyone's smiling face as well. Cool. So this is, again, notice on the top, game weeks 8 to 13. This is injury based. You've got Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento, both starters, right, when they're healthy. They're both injured. So you've got Pope, Byrne, Botman, Trippier guaranteed to start, I'd say, for the next 5 weeks, assuming they're healthy, which they are. And then Schär and Chiao, I would say, are up in the air who starts. Schär has been the starter for the last legitimately 7 years, even pre-takeover. But Chiao we just bought, and he's looked really, really good. So I'm not sure what that's there. But I think you can buy those top 4 and feel really good about it at the moment. Okay. And one note, Trippier, I feel like you actually feel even better because he'll get subbed off around minute 70. And so if Newcastle concede late, Trippier still gets a clean sheet if he gets subbed off around 70. So there's a sneaky upside of getting clean sheets even when they concede after he gets subbed off. So.
What's up with Botman? He's, by all accounts, a fantastic player, and I'm a little surprised that he is not. I know he's come back from a pretty long-term injury, if I recall, someone not in the fan base, but I'm surprised that he's not gunning for a starting position, considering how heavily you guys pursued him when you signed him.
For sure, yeah. He had an ACL injury, and then when he came back injured it in a minor way again. So he had probably an 18-month period where he only played, I'd say, like a half dozen games total. So it was a rough, and this was, again, 2.5 years ago, right? So it was kind of a rough time there. He's back and he's healthy now, and he is legitimately very, very good. If you would ask the fans, if they're not from the Northeast, I would say they would want probably Botman to start, but Dan Burns just, he embodies so much of the club. He's from the area. People love him there, but Botman's a decade younger and definitely more, has a higher ceiling for sure. So,
okay.
Does that answer it a little bit or not?
No, that feels great. I was kind of just like, I know he's good. Why is he not starting? But I understand that Dan Burn has been exceptional for Newcastle for a long period of time.
Cool. So that's 8 through 13. Fast forward now, you're looking 14 to 22. I chose 22 as an arbitrary end date because the fixtures start to turn a little bit around 22. That also puts us, I think that's 15 game weeks, right? So that's a good run of time to go. So you've got Pope, Livramento, and Hall are locked in. They're starters. If you want to just kind of quote unquote buy the Newcastle defense, you can buy those. Trippier is going to be a backup when everybody's healthy. He's 35, but still a valuable member. And then those center backs, right? You got Burn versus Botman at the left center back position and Shaw versus Chow at the right center back. So if you want to buy the Newcastle defense and you notice one of these guys locking down a spot, like Chow especially, I'd say you can go ahead and buy him. But with Champions League, with League Cup runs, there's a chance that they rotate, and I just don't have the crystal ball, and I'm not quite sure. And Eddie Howe might say, you know what, I'm fine each of them playing half the games. That might be the case too.
Yeah, because that was an interesting point, as you said earlier, that in aggregate, the summer window was a good one, even though the Isak drama was there. And I remember you and I have had an offline conversation. I believe you said that was attributed to just the fact that you guys have more depth. And one of the fatal flaws that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, from an outside perspective with Newcastle over the past couple of years has just been not having enough depth and getting crushed in those heavy rotational periods. And so I have to expect that you guys are going to rotate a lot going forward.
Yeah. Similar to Tottenham last year, right? We had our first Champions League campaign in 20 plus years, 2 years ago, and he got absolutely decimated by injuries. And Howe's mentioned publicly that he learned a lot in that process and learned that, we got a new performance coach before last year, and just said he learned a lot. He's going to implement not running these guys to the ground. So there's that risk. But again, starting game week 14 going forward, you got Livramento, Hall, and Pope are locked in there. Center backs up in the air.
That'll be interesting to have some attacking wing back options. So I appreciate the call out there.
Yeah.
Jumping into mids a little bit here.
Yep. Cool. So again, see their smiling faces. You got, obviously you got the center mids up top. So we play a 4-3-3 typically. So you got your 3 center mids up top that, are the consistent rotation guys. And you got your wingers on the bottom there, Gordon, Alanga, Barnes, and Jacob Murphy.
So of this midfield, I think what's interesting about Newcastle is like all of these guys for the most part are really good players, like Tonali, Joe Ellington, Bruno Guimaraes. They're all amazing, but I only see like 3 players that I think I would actively look at, and 2 of them are pretty deep. I'm talking like, to put in American football terms, wide receiver 3 territory, and like Alangas and Harvey, or Alanga and Harvey Barnes. So I see like Gordon and Guimaraes. Should we focus on them, or am I missing anybody, or is that our correct take?
No, when putting this together, I've got a similar recommendation slide with the bubbles and stuff at the end, or at the end of the section, so we can even jump there if you want. But a lot of them are like Tonali, for example. We can start there. We can go back to.
There's some great data in here. I don't want to gloss over it.
Yeah,
you want to start at the Guimaraes versus the other 6.5s, because
let's do that actually. Yeah.
Just this one.
We'll find it.
It's one with 2 like.
There you are.
There you go.
Oh, okay, thanks.
What I did.
This one's interesting because 6.5s is a little bit of a kind of a trap right now, in the sense that a lot of these guys are okay, and I'm curious to see where Guimaraes is in this. So sorry.
Yeah. So what I did was I grabbed anybody. If you had 6.5 to spend, and you're looking to get a midfielder there, you got Bruno on the far left, and then everybody else that kind of is the highest owned players at that spot. And my takeaway, I called him a spice pick, if you want, in the sense of he's actually, he fares pretty nicely. You got fantasy points last 2 years up top, and then you've got goal involvements as well, if you want to focus on just that. like he fares pretty well versus, Declan Rice versus, he's even better than Jeremy Doku, which I didn't expect coming into this, right? But again, if you want to compare him, like Alex Iwobi, for example, right? Both in terms of goal contributions, both in terms of points, a little bit of a step up, at least recently. And then you've got, Kudus at West Ham for the last 2 years. Now at Tottenham, I feel like he'll pop off even more. He's only 0.2 million more. Like I would probably go that route. But if you're like, you know what, I've already got 3 Tottenham players, or I already have, I want to mix it up, or Newcastle have a good fixture, Bruno is not a terrible pick. I probably just wouldn't lead with him.
Okay. And so on the next slide, you have some more information about, it looks like, Bruno and Gordon. I think historically my eyes would turn more towards a Gordon just from the offensive threat perspective. And him kind of being, is it fair to say, the talisman right now?
Yeah, I would say so. The reason I put this slide here was I was actually intrigued that the numbers are closer than I would have guessed, at least over the last 2 years. And a lot of that's due to minutes, right? But if you're looking to have a guy in the team that's going to play every single week, Bruno's, I think 0.9 million less. So you get him a little cheaper, and he puts almost similar-ish stats up, at least recently. He's pushed forward a little bit more even this year, within the team. So again, I'm not comparing him to Gordon. He's not better than Gordon in FPL by any means, but he was a lot closer than I anticipated, and that's why I put him in the. I put this slide in here.
Super interesting. I never would have expected them to be so close.
I remember him last year being a player that I'd be like, he'd annoyingly, in a way, jump in on goal involvements where I'd be like, damn, should I get this guy? Because he's always in and around it. But I do think the underlying is right, being a little bit higher in Gordon's favorite track a little bit. Yeah. I'm also curious from this perspective, now that we've seen, I don't think we've seen a pen with both Gordon and Voltemade on the pitch at the same time. Do you have a thought process on that?
So there were 2 in the Champions League match. So Gordon is the penalty taker right now at the moment, but Voltemade was visibly frustrated he didn't get to take it in those games. And then Gordon got subbed off against Forest at the very end. Right. And then we got a penalty, and Voltemade took it, and he smashed it upper 90. And I saw one stat, or at one place, they try to quantify penalties by location and power, and they had Voltemadas as the 12th best penalty of quote unquote all time based on power to the upper 90 basically. And no idea how big that sample size was. I'm not going to say that that's an accurate number, but I just did see that they tried to quantify. It was interesting, but
would have been brutal if you hit the bar on that. But yeah, it was. I mean, it was sick.
Yeah. But anyway, so long story short, Gordon's a penalty taker as of now. But again, I can see Gordon usually gets subbed off around minute 80, give or take. And then who knows, maybe if Voltemade becomes the new number 9 and Gordon goes through a rough patch and Voltemade takes it, and who knows, maybe he becomes penalties in the future. So
and when you say that of getting subbed off in around minute 80, I know that he last time was subbed off for Harvey Barnes here. Is that so? That's a typical thing even in previous seasons? Because I thought he was I thought Gordon last season was like a 90-minute man, or is that not the case?
Oh yeah, he definitely can be. And when there's injuries and such, he will, because Harvey Barnes is very effective. And I'm not even saying 80. Eddie Howe just makes pretty late subs, but it's not like guaranteed a minute 80. But when Harvey Barnes is healthy, he's a really good option. You can see this is goals plus assists minus penalties per 90. And the knock on Harvey Barnes is all he does is score, right? Doesn't really offer much defensively, doesn't really offer much from a creative standpoint, but he scores a lot of goals. But in FPL, if all he does is score, that's a really good thing. So Gordon's, the starter lockdown guaranteed. But if Gordon were to go down, I would say I would pick up Barnes in a heartbeat there, because he is so effective when he does play. But yeah, he's just not the starter, and that's okay from a perspective. But if you see Gordon get injured, I'd pick up Barnes next week in a heartbeat.
Interesting.
I just do think that's a tough thing to think about when you're thinking of Gordon. I would assume now that he is kind of the talisman of this team, and that's kind of what you indicated. But the problem is when you're comparing someone else to him who may also be a talisman at their team, if he's not getting those full 90s, right, and he's regularly getting pulled at the 75th to 85th minute somewhere in there, that definitely, I mean, it's not nothing, right? That takes away from some of the time that he could be getting in on goals. So I just think that's an interesting thing.
This is also surfacing as a concern to me, because I am starting to view this as there are two dogs biting at one of each of Gordon's ankles, right? You have Ultramod on the pens, and you got Harvey Barnes on the minute and the late goals risk. And I find that interesting that in two avenues towards points, which is another factor I look for
He's
when
got
picking
some
players,
risk. Yeah.
like point diversification.
Mhm.
He's got questions on two major avenues. Luke, could you go to the next slide? I've actually have a question. So in all of the data that I've seen in the past 4 slides, every single one has had a regression in terms of expected output from 23-24 to 24-25 on the Newcastle team.
Yeah.
Is that just down to the injury crisis last year, do you think? Or was there a play style shift? Because if like every single team on the slide went down, I'd be like, okay, there was less goals in the Prem, which I know there were.
Yeah.
But you can see Forest shot up, Bournemouth shot up.
Yeah.
Teams we thought performed well shot up, and I don't know what caused Newcastle to regress so severely.
Yeah. Or what caused Gordon to regress so severely?
Well, I feel like it's across all of them because Barnes dropped in 24-25 from 23-24. Gimmers dropped.
Yeah.
Seems
good
like
point.
everybody did.
Yeah, good point. I would say for Gordon, he would even admit that he didn't have his best year last year, and I think I'm not too worried about that necessarily. I think he can pick it back up. But to your point though, and this is kind of in the recommendations then for midfielders, if you're comparing him to other guys that cost the same, right? I know Forrest is really struggling, so Gibbs White might not be the best example there. But when you've got Clivert at Bournemouth or even other guys, Martinelli, Trossard, whatever it is, I feel like they would be decent options to turn to. But again, Gordon is still on penalty duty right now, so if he doesn't change, right, boom, that's 5 goals guaranteed basically a year that you get. Yeah. I'm not saying he's going to get usurped by that. It's just a potential risk.
Okay. No, I do think this is interesting. Like the point that I just made of, you could go somewhere else. When you're actually looking at these guys that you put together, I mean, I don't see anyone on this list that I'd be interested in picking. And Gordon is definitely a player that, jumps out of this list, right? So I think in terms of value for money, maybe he is, with having relatively guaranteed pens, that's worthwhile
a really
for his price. Yeah.
Then I'd say if you want to jump to the midfield, the kind of recommendations. I call, if you remember on the defenders recommendations, I put, I think, good options or something like that on top for them. For Gordon, I put decent option, right? You can be confident in picking him, right? He's going to start when he's healthy. He's going to, put up good numbers. You also could look elsewhere if you were intrigued. Harvey Barnes, I have a 4-year-old son. That's his favorite player. So I got a shout out to Harvey Barnes. But I think it's just because of the way his name sounds. I'm not even sure. But anyway, I would pick up Harvey in a heartbeat if Gordon gets injured at that left wing. Matt, you mentioned Alanga. I think Alanga is actually the highest owned midfielder for Newcastle in FPL.
Really?
It was only like 5%, give or take. But it's interesting to see at 6.8. Honestly, so yes, 0 goal involvements. He's struggled a little bit to get off the starting blocks. Jacob Murphy's even started a couple of games ahead of him, but he has looked a lot better in the last couple of games, and he's shown last year at Forest that he is capable. So I'm actually pretty high on Alanga, medium and long term, but I wouldn't buy him right now just because he hasn't proven it yet. And then Jacob Ramsey tossing in there. He might start at center mid over Joelinton going forward, especially against weaker teams. He's a cheap option. I would say if he starts performing, he kind of floats into more number 10 positions or attacking mid positions. I would say Ramsey's a decent option if he starts performing at that kind of budget level. But everybody else, right? Tonali, unbelievable player, could literally play for any team in the world. Not great in FPL though, due to lack of def cons, and he doesn't score very much. And Joelinton, not great in FPL either. Bruno's a spice pick. Murphy is a backup.
Yeah, I mean, good players, not good for FPL, I think is the conclusion there. And it's unfortunate. I think they were trying to make def cons more advantageous to picking those guys, but it hasn't materially impacted them.
I think it is interesting to hear you say that there's nobody who jumps out to you here in your midfield that does great from the def con perspective. Because when you think about difficult defensive midfield squads, Newcastle is the top of the charts. So I'm surprised that's not the case. But I hadn't noticed them jumping out from that sense either. So
Joelinton's the only one who's even gotten a def con point this year. He's gotten it in 2 games.
So. Why is that? Do you guys just possess Is it as simple as that? Or
I would have guessed
DEFCON stuff is tricky. I'm sorry
who
to
knows?
make you track this random ass stat, but
No, it's good. I would have guessed Tonali, or even Bruno, because they're kind of just Joelinton for sure. I expected, but I would have guessed the other two. But yeah, I don't know why.
Okay.
It just didn't show up.
Last question here before we jump to forwards is just when we're talking about Gordon's minutes, would it surprise you to see the odd benching for him? You know, when you're talking about that rotation and what Howe has learned, is it something where Harvey Barnes is kind of knocking on the door and could start the odd game over him?
Oh yeah, like in terms of confidence wise, Harvey could start and everybody would feel perfectly fine with that. The only thing to look out is like for Champions League. So
yeah,
we've got like this is a 3-day turnaround, 4-day turnaround.
Yeah.
3
Yeah,
days.
you have a tight schedule coming in October for sure.
So like, for example, we play, November 5th, we host Athletic Bilbao and then we play at Brentford on a Sunday.
Right.
Is there a chance Harvey Barnes starts that just to rest him? Maybe, but it's hard. It's hard to know for sure. I would say if you want to go the Gordon route, I'd say just go the Gordon route and feel good about it. Okay. But if you want guaranteed 90 minutes with no reasonable backup, you could look elsewhere if you want to.
So, okay. That's probably a great way of putting it from everything you said.
This is a tough stretch though. I'm looking at the future fixtures. You have a Saturday to the next Tuesday to Saturday to Wednesday to Sunday to Wednesday to Sunday. Like it's 3 games a week now for the foreseeable. So, or for the next couple months. So worth noting.
That's why you make the Champions League, right? That's the beauty of getting to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So jumping into forwards, obviously a lot less options here, but I do think this is a really worthwhile question of how these two guys are going to stack up.
Yeah. Cool. Interesting too, when I noticed FPL had Johan Wissa at 7.4, whereas Voltamano was at 7.2. I think similar to the whole starting situation. But anyway, if you want to go to the next slide, interesting to see the Voltamano of his price range is the highest scoring player so far, right? He's got the purple patch. He's 4th highest in terms of ownership on that right there for people in his price range. If you go forward again, then bringing in all forwards, he's second to Haaland this year.
In terms of points per match.
Points per match, which is crazy. And then 10th or something in terms of ownership. Which that was interesting to see. But yeah, easy for the next 3 weeks. This is injured. Pick Voltamata. You'll feel good. He's going to play and hopefully score. So you feel good there, especially because Vissa has not even trained with Newcastle yet at all, ever.
So who, if Voltamata needs to be rested, is the rotation? Is it Gordon play striker? Is it your to be banished to the smiley face realm guy we saw earlier off that first slide? Who is it? Osula?
It depends. If we're winning, Osula will come in probably around minute 85 or 90.
Okay.
If we're trying to tackle or trying to chase the game, Gordon will shift to striker. Harvey Barnes will come in at left wing.
Okay, so it's not even an Osula is like a 70-minute man. He's like a not really a man.
He's a bench player.
At least historically. Who knows?
Okay.
I'll look him up too. But
all right. So then 11 through 15, it looks like you have it shifting.
Well, it's just a wait and see. I think Voltamano will probably have a clear run because week 16 is AFCON. So I think
for that.
I think we're going to run with Voltamano literally through end of January and have Vissa just come off the bench because familiarity, because of injuries, etc. And then because you don't want to switch starters for 4 weeks and then switch back again for 6.
Right.
So I'd say Voltamano is a good choice, but I just put in yellow because, who knows.
Well, it doesn't hurt that he's scoring at the rate he is. It's hard to pull a guy out of the lineup that's scoring every other game.
For sure. Yeah.
So 100%. That is a really good point, though, with the AFCON thing. I completely blanked about that with Wissa. Like, he is going to represent the DRC, right? And they've qualified, I believe. So he's gone from 16, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that's actually the next slide, too.
Okay.
There you go. So 16 to 20, he'll be gone. And then if they advance, 21 and 22 are at risk as well. So
I'm going to need to start looking at AFCON a little more seriously is what I'm realizing.
I did it. I planned through that today. I spent way too much time looking at that, but yeah, it gets a little interesting. Okay, so I know you have some remaining slides here that are kind of around the attack. Tell us where to jump around. Is there anything more you want to touch on of this style of attack? And like, do you think that this attack has underperformed so far and is going to ascend a little bit?
I would say we can actually just go to the next, just one after another next few slides, if that works. So the only reason I'm like, hey, don't hop on the golden retriever train too quickly is because last year, look at that, non-penalty goals last year. Yohan was second in the Premier League, right? So he's a poacher, right? He scores goals. He's a lot easier to kind of slot into your lineup versus Voltamata, who likes to drift and kind of almost like a attacking mid-ish. So that's why I'm like, hey, I think you're good through at least February with Voltamata, but hold your horses. This is very good. And I think being at Brentford, he kind of went under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, worth not closing your mind to.
Yeah, for sure. So there's that one. Next slide. Long story short, we funnel goals towards strikers. Historically, I have next season or last season stats last year, just to kind of like show that, but it's actually pretty consistent year over year. So you have your striker on top, and consistently our striking partnership, sometimes Wilson and Isak, sometimes just Isak, gets you, give or take 30 goals, right? Combined per year. Then you've got your wingers in that second batch, right? Will get you anywhere in the, 11 to 18 range. Murphy had a really good year last year, but that won't continue. But you're looking at wingers will get you 11 to 18. Striker combination is going to get you 30 plus, and then you have your center mids will get you 5 to 10, give or take, maybe even more with Bruno, because he's gotten forward a lot more this year. So, and this is pretty consistent year over year of like, you can almost jot in at least the positions, who's getting the goals and where they're coming from based on how we play. If you go one more, I believe it's one more slide. Yeah, this is like back post chances. So Newcastle, again, this is last year. Newcastle first in back post chances created, second in back post goals scored, and second in back post XG there. So like the system is that's why Voltamata's gotten off the mark really quickly, whereas someone like Sesko maybe hasn't, is like the system really puts them in positions to succeed, maybe more so than elsewhere.
Those are poignant slides. I really like the last one with the strikers are the guys for Newcastle combined with this one that illustrates not only are they the guys, but they're also getting a ton of chances. I think that's a great point. And
you're the striker, Mac.
I am the striker. You're the striker. And if the rotation risk is down, that makes me, and we know Voltramont is good at penalties, this is increasing my perception of him because he's just this guy that I knew nobody about, like literally nothing about before the season.
Yeah, and also good at penalties. He's 3 for 4 in his career, so so don't get too excited.
And 2 of them are
smashing him in the top corner. Yeah. He'll be.
2 of them are highlight reel penalties.
Yeah, so that's just so I'm high in the attack long term. They've looked a lot better. Very uncertain, the last 8 weeks, but I feel good going forward. Cool. Other notes, not super relevant, but like home versus away. Really, I think maybe more than other teams matters for Newcastle, and that at home we played Barcelona, we played Liverpool, we played Arsenal. We tried to go at all those teams and really go offensive. And I bet we'll actually get more shutouts away than we will at home this year, just because of that fact. Whereas away, I think Howe's shown the willingness to shut up shop a little bit and maybe even go to a back five and say, hey, we'll draw you 0-0, 1-1. Maybe we'll try to steal a 1-0 or 2-1 win. But we want to just restrict the chances there. So I bet you'll see a pretty stark XG difference, even combined, game XG at home versus game XG on the road. There's something to be aware of slightly. If you're putting Gordon in, away at Palace, maybe not a great idea versus maybe even Gordon at home to Man City. Like you might feel okay about that, So things like that. So calling that out, intensity, et cetera. St. James's Park, has a good reputation for, riling up intensity and makes the guys work hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really all. Now I know form and fixtures are the two things for Premier or for FPL. On the left, you'll have the difficulty rating that you're used to. I'm a nerd, so I actually make my own difficulty rating.
I love
you. We were talking about before you came on. We're so glad you don't play this because you would wipe the floor with us. Oh my God.
This is so.
How do you not play?
It's also awesome watching your reflections from an outside perspective of who these teams are, because when I look at some of these things, I'm like, I don't think Brighton is a 3. I think that they're way higher. And basically, you're validating me, and I feel very good right now.
Yeah, and this is Newcastle specific, and even home and away specific as well, because Newcastle has had pretty stark home and away differences.
It's the goat.
So I have a Google sheet I've been tracking for a few years where I track a bunch of specific things. I don't share it with anybody. I just do it for myself. And I have a fixture difficulty list. So, for example, on the left, right, that's the FPL one. There's a lot of gray in there with some greens. But for me, it's like, all right, is gray good? Is gray bad? Like there's nuance there. Whereas if you look to the right, there's a lot of light green and a lot of dark green on there too. So that the one on the right, I think, kind of paints a little bit of a better picture of like, hey, you've got some really tasty matches there, and you've got some decently tasty ones too. So the reason Brighton's a 1, Newcastle haven't won there in 8 years in Brighton. And then previously they're in the championship. That's the last time we won was, I think, 16. We were in the championship. And then we didn't play Brighton for like 20 years before that. So we haven't won in a really long time at the top flight there. So that's a little bit of a risky fixture. But after that, you got to feel good about all those teams too. Man City is tough, obviously. But like you got Burnley, Sunderland, Burnley, Palace at home, Leeds at home, Villa at home, Wolverhampton on the road. There's just a lot of good fixtures that I feel like that's a 16-game run that I feel like you could put those guys in and maybe have 1, 2, or 3 weeks that you swap them out. But out of a 16-match run, I feel like this is the good time. If you want to hop on the Newcastle train, this is a good time to do that. Based on what's up ahead and what the vibes are. Vibes FC, I know, isn't here tonight, but what the vibes are amongst the club. They're simultaneously pretty high, but also growing in intensity. So.
Well, and I think this is a really interesting way to look at it, especially he's going to be watching intently. He said that he's pissed to be missing this because there's a lot of Newcastle questions he has. But I think this is interesting in the larger FPL landscape right now. If you still have your wild card, you're probably looking at something like a right now this week or something in a little bit later down the line of like the 12 or 13 range. And I think this is interesting to look at of I'm sitting here as somebody who's planning that 12 or 13 and being like, shit, the way you're talking about Ultimate, maybe I should be getting him in now. But this is also interesting around that AFCON time in 16 when we're going to be getting 5 free transfers. Every team is going to get that. Yep. Newcastle are going to be an absolute must. And I, looking ahead today, I was realizing like that's the case. Around that time is when I'm like, oh, you need those guys in. But now looking at this and talking to you, I'm like, shit, I'm nervous not to be having their striker right now.
I think it's based on if trend continues. It's not an if but when for these guys. And I think the risk profile here is just how early do you want to pull the trigger? Do we have confidence that they're going to beat a Fulham and a potentially revived West Ham and a decent Brentford?
Yeah.
Or is it better to just wait until we hit 15-ish?
Yeah. That's fair.
TBD.
Fair.
Wow. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like we need to pay you under the table for this because the amount of analysis that you put into a guest spot pod is making me be like, damn, we got to put even more work into our regular. But I really appreciate all the insight, man. You're a Newcastle expert. You should be doing this for BBC, not us. So or Sky Sports.
Perfectly content having it be a hobby, but no, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you guys. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. All right, we will be back with a new episode after this next game week. So good luck to everybody coming out of the international break, and thanks for listening. Appreciate it.